This is the Gerber Knives Affinity in copper. Also comes in aluminum, steel frame lock, but this, as you can see, is the copper one. This is the dressed up version. And this knife is interesting. Gerber Knives sent it to me because I liked this knife so much, the Zilch, a knife I got for 20 bucks at REI that is so excellent that with better materials on the blade and the handle, this would be an excellent platform knife for them, I think, like their bug out. I said that and I mean that, and I still feel that way. So they said, here, can we send you a couple knives? And I said, yes. They sent me this knife, the Affinity, and the Sedulo. Now I put a video out on the Sedulo. It also comes in some other colorways, and this is an excellent EDC knife with S30V blade steel made in the United States with an excellent blade grind, fit and finish, and other things. I really think that this is an excellent Gerber knife. And those are words you have not heard me say here ever, besides these two knives, because as I've mentioned before, I know the Gerber of the 70s. My dad had a really great sort of buck 110 style knife that Gerber made that was outstanding. And then they kind of went the big box route for a while, but now they've been making a comeback with some really cool designs. This Affinity is a cool design. It is very simple. It is slender. It is sleek. The copper definitely adds a good bit of weight. I imagine the aluminum version feels like a feather by comparison because this is a steel frame lock also. But this is interesting because they're billing it as a gentleman's knife. The write-up on their page says, a little something for those high-toned occasions. The Affinity is an EDC knife with class, built for double Windsors. They're talking about those big fat Windsor knots on your tie, and three-piece suits in mind. And they go on to talk about how refined it is. And it is a nice, refined design. I have some issues with it, which I'll talk about in a second. But with this copper and the size, it does not strike me as a gentleman's knife. I mean, this would be a heavy knife to have banging around in tuxedo pants. If you had it clipped on, it would still feel heavy. It would pull that side of your pants down. Suit pants, generally tend to be pretty light. Even winter weight suit pants are pretty light. And to have this rather large-ish knife, that's a 3.6-inch D2 blade there. It's rather large and heavy. Doesn't seem like much of a gent's knife. Like I think of a gentleman's knife, I think of high-end, this kind of thing, like the Tactile Rockwall or lower end. I don't have too many gentleman's knives, but something like this Civivi Hadros. It's slim, super light, and discreet to carry. This one is rather large, I think, but it's got the slender thing down. Maybe if they reduced it and made it a 3-inch blade and reduced everything by whatever percentage that is, maybe it'd be more in the gentleman's carry line. Also, probably the aluminum version is much more suit carry friendly because of the lighter material. Copper is pretty darn heavy, and this has no weight reduction in it. I don't know if you can do weight reduction in copper. I'm not sure if that's a sturdy enough metal to do that with, or if you would lose all structural integrity. But so all of that aside, what do I think of this knife? I think it's got an excellent blade. I think the blade shape is really, excuse me, versatile. Also, it's got a nice hollow grind, which I very much appreciate. Comes to a very sharp edge. You can see how big that cutting edge is, how broad it is. So it's not exactly super thin behind the edge, but they ground the edge at such an angle that it would make it pretty thin and slicey. And then behind that is a pretty short but somewhat deep hollow grind. So all of those things make this very slender, half-inch, maybe a little bit more than half-inch wide blade, a pretty good cutter. It's D2 and coated, which I appreciate because some people in more humid climes might have difficulty with their D2. And as you can see here, if you unscrew the Torx on this side of the thumb stud, you can slide it up and down, or you could even switch sides with it. Slide it up and down to your perfect ergonomic needs. For me, it came set up perfectly. You can flip this thing out pretty well. It's got a pretty sturdy detent there, and so they placed that thumb stud pretty well. So I would say good blade overall. I always have take a little bit of issue with knives that are this slender, blades that are that slender. I think you're setting yourself up for a thrusting style knife more than a cutter, but then again, this is going for that very slim, slender Gents package. So I think they did a good job in hollow grinding it and then giving it a pretty pretty nice and high cutting edge there. All right, moving back to the handle. The handle shape is nice and neutral. I like the shape of it, the overall profile. I also like this chamfering here and around. Kind of takes off, you know, if this came out flat, you could see how this little pointy area might be sharp. That little pointy area has a barrel through which you can put a lanyard, which I appreciate. Little double-ended screws here and barrel spacer there. Here the barrel spacer and screw all go into that one pocket clip screw. The pocket clip is fine. It's a little loose, makes that little rattle sound. You could easily take that. I could easily take that off and fix it. I just haven't yet. It carries pretty nicely in jeans, definitely. Jeans have that flat pocket seam, so it fits pretty nice. Not too much hangs out. I find copper pretty grippy, so I had no trouble retrieving it from my pocket. Something they do here, which I appreciate, and who was it? I think Kershaw's done this a bit, is that pinch plate. They call it a pinch plate. And first of all, it ties in aesthetically. You got copper on both sides, and you've got this weird, I'm not sure what that is, that grid. It reminds me of those 80s posters where it was like a grid, a neon grid out in space with an alicorn running across it. What's an alicorn, you ask? It's a unicorn with wings. But the point is the structure of that pinch point. This is not only an over travel stop, but it's a great way to not put pressure on that lock bar when you slow roll the knife. So that is something I really appreciate. I like it. Kind of wish that the line here was parallel with that chamfer line. I don't know if that's me just being, you know, retentive there, or if that is something that bothers other people, but it's not a deal breaker. This also adds a little bit of texture. So you can, it's got that proprietary pivot, which is pretty cool. I like that. They don't have branding all over it. Gerber. Well, they have it there, but it's embossed and in the same color, but they don't have it all over the blade, which I appreciate. And I like that it's just there. Their old logo was cool with the sword and the stone, but maybe that's well, they changed to that a long time ago. Okay, so my main issue with this knife is the lock bar. It's just painful to use. It's very stiff. You know, it doesn't have a long run here, so it's going to be stiff. It's steel, and it takes a bit of effort to move over. I'm fine with that, but the surface that you're pushing is just thin metal, and it's uncomfortable. And you can see how it was thicker down there, and instead of doing some sort of a nice gradual slanted or banked chamfer to make it more comfortable, they just sort of scooped out that whole bit there, and so it's straight and flat, and then it comes up and it's straight and flat down there. So it's just, for a lock that has that much, what do you call it, tension on it, it's just not comfortable. Maybe it loosens up over time, I don't know, but it reminds me a bit of the flat iron in that respect. This is an early flat iron, and always painful to undo. This one has, I'm not sure I know in the second part they reversed the shape of the lozenge opening. I always like the flat grind on this. Good pencil sharpener in this knife. But all the tension there on the lock bar, for that short run of lock, all that tension, and then the thin serrations there. It's just not very comfortable. So it's interesting how these two knives have, good ergonomics when you're holding it, terrible ergonomics on the use of the lock bar. But then this knife, the Sedulo, has great ergonomics everywhere and awesome engineering for the lock, even though it's a totally different kind of lock. And same thing here. And this is definitely not made in the USA. This is like towards the bottom end of what they're doing. And this thing is outstanding. Even the sort of squared off, sort of unfriendly lock bar here works just fine and doesn't hurt. But yeah, so just a little tweak. You see that also in the Gerber, I'm not sure what this one's called. This was a gift from my brother-in-law a few years ago. And you see the same thing. It's a short lock bar, so there's a lot of tension in there, and it's just not a comfortable surface for people who have fleshy thumbs with flesh on them. So interesting knife. I like the bamboo on this one. Okay, so I'll show it with my Gerbers. There it is. Here's a little Gerber family portrait. What I really want is my dad's Gerber from the 70s. I'm not sure if he knows where that is. I hope he does. And then here, I just wish they'd stop making this, but I know they make a lot of money on this knife. I saw this in someone's pocket on our road trip, as a matter of fact. Recognized it immediately. This is their gravy train called the Paraframe, and I've had this large and small, and it's just kind of an awful knife. But I guess so. If you're gonna pay Paraframe money, I would get the Zilch instead, 1,000 times over. Even though it's quote unquote less capable, these just not a big fan of the Gerber Paraframe. The Sedulo, big fan. This went on my road trip recently and did everything that I needed it to do, which wasn't much. But you'd be surprised at how this thing can really precisely get between the squares of a waffle when slicing. This ended up being used a lot as a food knife on that trip. I do like this Sedulo. I think it's definitely worth checking out if you have any sort of EDC needs. It's totally locked up, and if you like access bar style locks, they have it down. And it's made in the US with S30B, so good deal. So for this knife, the Affinity, I think it gets mostly there. I have a feeling, like I said before, the aluminum version is the ultimate version of this knife because it's going to be way lighter. And in that case, having a 3.6-inch bladed gentleman's knife seems tenable. When you have a 3.6-inch, that means it's going to be about a 4.6-inch handle, or a little less, 4.5, 4.25-inch handle. That means a lot of extra weight. So if the whole knife were smaller with this copper, I'd say yes, for carrying in a tuxedo or in a suit. Otherwise, this just makes a cool EDC. I'm really looking, in jeans and just regular I mean, that blade is capable, definitely very sharp. It's D2. It's nice and stabby and pokey if you like that. I do. You have the option to move that around to optimize deployment. You got the pinch plate, which I like, especially because I fat finger things a lot. And you got a decent clip. Yeah, this is a cool knife. Oh, and the hollow grind. The hollow grind wins the day. If this didn't have that, I'd have issues with the blade. But well, here it is. Check it out. If you like long, slender EDC knives, I'd say check out this Gerber Affinity. It is priced at $53. Now that's on the Gerber website, so I'm sure it's less expensive elsewhere. Here it is with a 3-inch Rat 2 And then I have something else. Do I have anything else? I was going to show it with something else to compare, but, well, there it is with a 3-inch knife. All right, well, thanks for watching. This is the Gerber Affinity.